liked doing art, and I liked doing science after I found out what it was about and I was able to do it. Doing that made me happy, and especially when I could combine the two. That was beyond repair. When I was a young child, I was particularly interested in coloring books and doing that. This is when I'm like 4 years old. And my aunt, who used to stay with us some, she was my best buddy for me. And I would wake her up at like 4 in the morning and say, "Aunt Sherry, can we color?" And she'd get up and do it. And so that's how I got hooked into art, was that enjoying doing that process. And she was the person that got me there, and continued to do that. From my experience with her, every time I could in school, in grade school or junior high, I would take the art class, do the art, do it and do it well, and usually succeed. So I just fell in love with the idea of designing things and coloring them or painting them, as I was able to do later. One of the teachers taught me how to oil paint. And so I was hooked on being an artist until I was in high school. The year that I graduated, Apollo 11 put astronauts on the moon, and it just kind of blew my mind. I wanted to be an astronaut too. So I had a dilemma, and it took a while to sort that out. But and I was, trying to trade back and forth. I want to be an artist or an engineer. That got solved a little bit when I was fortunate enough in my first couple of years in college, in a community college. The head of the art department got me an opportunity to go to Florence, to Italy, to the International University of Art in Florence for 2 semesters. It was a winter and a spring. When I got there, it took me a little while to not be lonesome, because I started making friends, and then I found out that this guy, Leonardo da Vinci, good painter. And then I found out more. He was a big topic in Florence. And I found out that he was a designer, and he designed airplanes and tanks and scuba type equipment and all kinds of things. I really liked that combination. I knew he was a great painter, and I got the idea, well, maybe I could be an artist and an engineer. Well, but I don't know if I can do that. But I left Italy with the idea that that's what I wanted to do, and I didn't forget it. I kept the thought in my mind. So when I got back from Italy, I went and took a physics class, and the professor there was very nice to me. I was so interested in, he made holograms, with the ruby laser and holographic equipment. And I was there when he made one that had an astronaut standing on the moon with an American flag that was a hologram. And I said, oh, I'd like to put that into a sculpture. And he went, sculpture, how are you going to put it in a sculpture? And I said, well, I know how to make geodesic domes, and I can make a little one for the ruby laser, and I can make a bigger one to put the holographic equipment in. I think I can put a device on the biggest one where somebody who's interested in seeing that can put their face up there, and it will block the light that I had on that image. And when they put their face in there, the laser turned on, and here's this hologram of an astronaut standing on the moon. Well, I thought I was pretty hot stuff then, because I was going, I saw that, with Apollo 11, and I'm doing it in art now. And he made that and some other things I'd done into a one-man show. And so now I was really hooked. I loved physics, I loved art, and Leonardo was my role model. But I still was, not an artist or an engineer yet.
Many, many years ago, back in the, I would say, mid-70s, we met in school, and we were both in college. Rod was finishing up his 4th year, and I was starting my first as a freshman. And my dad had encouraged me to take a communications class, even though that wasn't my major. He said, everybody needs to take a communication class because you communicate, throughout your life with people. It doesn't matter what you do, but you're going to be communicating. So begrudgingly, I took a communication class, and it just so happened Rod was in that class. And that's how we met in school. And of course, Rod was always very good at, speaking, and he was on the debate team. And of course, we met and were eventually dating. And then I was scared to death to get up in front of the class with him in the class to give any kind of speech. But he was so cool and collected when he did any of his presentations. So anyway, so we met in college, and we've, been going out ever since. Got married about 6 years later, and then 6 years after that, we had 2 girls. Started out as an artist, so he was an artist. I think when we first met, he was in art school, and he'd always been interested, in kind of the engineering aspects after going to Italy and, learning more about Leonardo da Vinci and how he was an artist and an inventor and an engineer and all that. And so that was kind of like his hero, back then, and to this day, I guess I should say. So he decided to take up an engineering career, and he was interested in science and interested in space. So he took up aerospace engineering. He kind of left the art somewhat and got into the engineering, but when he finished his schooling, he would design airplanes. He was a designer, so he designed airplanes. So there was some art, in that aspect of his, his career at that point.
After, being interested in being an artist and an engineer, I ended up having a friend that was an astronaut who cut 3 of my paintings that were encaustics paintings. And he was an astronaut that was on Apollo 15. He flew the lander down and walked on the moon, and his name was Jim Irwin. I told him I'd like to be an astronaut or, work for NASA. And he said, well, you have to have a PhD in aerospace engineering. And I kind of went, So I held that in my thought process. I ended up going to a school in Denver, and there I did a large painting that was kind of like Botticelli's Birth of Venus, only a Colorado version. That's where I was at the time. And I got that sent to Paris for the American Painters in Paris show. Then I got out of that community college, and I wanted to get accepted into the University of Colorado into the aerospace engineering department. And they wouldn't take me because they didn't have any math. But my brother was a medical student in there, and he was taking calculus. And he said, in the summer, you can take a calculus course, anybody can take it. And he said, if you go in there and pass that course, they will let you into the engineering department. And I went, really? Wow, okay. So I went and did that, and my poor brother, all summer, for 3 months, every day, he taught me algebra, trigonometry, and analytical geometry. And then I could do my calculus homework, and I ended up getting a B in the course, and then they let me into the engineering school. So my brother, once again, always somebody's doing me a favor that helped. So I got in, and that was a heck of an experience because I still didn't have a lot of, technical expertise. I could do calculus, but I ended up doing very well and get up to the bachelor's degree and master's degree, and then finally got a PhD like the astronaut told me I needed to get. And all the time that I was in school, I was painting on the side. It was like this addiction I had to do it. So I had always had paintings going of some kind, or at least one painting. After I got that doctorate, I got a job in New York at Grumman, and I got to be I went in as a design engineer, which is Leonardo was a designer, and he designed airplanes, and I went and got the guy at Northrop Grumman. It was Grumman, it wasn't Northrop yet either. He was the designer that designed the F-14. You've seen the movie Top Gun? That's an F-14. And so he was teaching me how to design airplanes. And I was there for a year and a half. My wife and I couldn't afford to buy a home in Long Island, New York at that level in our career. So we moved. I went to Georgia, which was Lockheed Martin, who I got, and the idea was from there to go out to California to the Skunk Works in a year or so. But they were going to bring a program there that I could work on, and it was one of these hypersonic, bomber programs, and they decided to get out of it. So here I was in Georgia. Lockheed knew that I was a hypersonic expert. That was what my PhD was about. They said, Georgia Tech needs a professor in the fall for flight mechanics, and they need one in the spring for designing airplanes. And I said, well, do I not work for you anymore? And they said, we'll pay you, and they'll pay you, and you can go do that. And I did it, and about halfway through the spring, I got an offer from the Skunk Works in California, a professor that they had that was learning what I was teaching, and he just picked up and finished the coursework that the last, month and a half or something of the curriculum that I'd laid out. They were glad to have me, glad to turn it over to him, so he would be the guy who took it over, and I got to go to California.
He just kind of stepped up the ladder and got into more of an executive position. So, things changed a lot.
Because of my career in engineering and being a program manager and then eventually a VP, I had this process that they use for doing a system like that. And I applied the same kind of thing to art. And what it was an airplane design. You have to decide what it is you're going to build and how you satisfy the customer. So, but only this time with art, I wanted to pick something that I loved to paint, and then I wanted to do compositions with it. And this is like Leonardo. He used to draw sketches of designs that he was going to do. He even did, internal body parts of human beings. He was so rigorous at getting correct the accurate description of whatever it was he was going to design.
It's so nice to see him. We had the studio built, on our house, and so nice to see him, in here doing like what he loves to do. I mean, he can be in here for hours, and just forget about the time. Sometimes he listens to music. Sometimes he'll listen to like books on tape that are basically related to, physics and astronomy and cosmology and all that. And then sometimes it's just quiet time. I think it just kind of depends on what his mood is or, that kind of thing. So, he just really enjoys doing what he's doing.
I usually got up early in the morning between 4 and 5 o'clock. And I would go in and take whatever it was that I was doing. Let's say in the case of I wanted to do a painting of the sun, I would go in and study everything I knew about the sun, all the way from the core to the different layers in the sun and to the emissions that they emit. and sunspots and all that, so that I would have that when I made the composition. It included that information. And my sun just wasn't a yellow sun. You could see all the way down to the core, and it was kind of transparent. So you could come up the levels and you'd work your way up, understanding what was in the middle, what was in the bottom of it, the very center, what was in the center, and what was on top of it, what they were, what kind of phenomena they were, what color they were, how hot were they. You know, I got that, so I had a really pretty good chance of doing something that was different than just a yellow sun. It had the ability to pretend like you had the ability to look inside of the sun and all the way out. But the first one that I did, that I went, okay, this works pretty cool. I can know what the object is, get a composition for it. The sun starts, let's say in the one case of ours, the sun starts as yellow and it ends up turning into a red giant. That's a different object. It's the same object, but it changed. The evolution of that I had. Now I could paint that painting from the sun to the red giant. And then after that, there was a detonation that left a white dwarf. So see, I got one and then two things and then three things, and I have a painting now that was kind of like Leonardo, and understanding everything about it that you could to do a painting like that. And I would typically do that kind of thinking and stuff in the morning. I always got some exercise to clear my head, usually a bike ride for 10 or 15 miles, and then come back and in the afternoon and the evening paint. And that was a routine I followed for years. Even when I was still an aerospace engineer, I would do that with my paintings on a weekend if I had free time. I always do a storyboard of some kind or another, but I ended up getting later when I got into the cosmology stuff and the Eagles paintings, which were about democracy and the Constitution. I had that there to lean on to help me decide what a composition was going to look like for a particular painting, whether it was a cosmic one or a patriotic one. I tried to get a gift that was based on, once again, Leonardo was always my, first one. But Einstein used to do thought process. He's this genius who's doing advanced physics, but he had a job as like a postal clerk. And he would do his week's worth of work maybe in one morning, and then the rest of the time he would do thinking about physics. He lived in a place where right outside of his window there was a tower with a clock on it. And he got into his thought process, and he imagined that if he were a photon that had come to the clock and then was reflected back out, what would he experience? And he realized that if he was moving away from that clock at the speed of light, you only see the clock because the light that hits it comes to your eye. But if you're moving as fast as light, you never see anything but the last image that you saw. That's only the only light that you get coming to you. That helped him, I believe, with not the general theory of relativity, but the earlier one, the special relativity analysis. And see, that kind of thought process is having the wherewithal to imagine that and then turn it into something that was the entire special relativity theory. Now, I'm never going to be able to do that, but I can certainly do it by doing that same kind of process to imagine, what I do between this object changing to this one. How do I depict that? What is it experiencing? So, it gets a little more than just an illustration. I wanted to be able to kind of feel it, feel this object experienced this event and turned into that. And to be able to not only sketch it, but paint it. And because it may be changing, maybe going from, 1,000,000 degrees to 100,000 degrees centigrade, that kind of thing. And having paint that could accommodate you applying that and getting that experience. And that's something that in some of my paintings, when I go to an art show or something, and somebody wants to know, I use that describing what the paint is and how it's working and what it means. So like how the Big Bang, millions of degrees, then it cooled down and started developing particles of mass that didn't exist before. They came from the energy and then created hydrogen atoms, stars, galaxies, galaxy clusters, and everything that was lit up in the world, where it came from and what the temperatures were and what the objects looked like at that time, and how much time had passed until they got to that location. So those are all kind of very scientific things that can be put into an artwork and described if you have been the one to put the painting together and understand it. And that kind of, people like that.
Rod came into my gallery when I was in Culver City before the pandemic. And I had a chance to speak with him, and he presented his work to me. And I found it to be very unique in process and in the way he paints and presents his work. I decided to take him under my wing and help him with his career. Well, if you can see the style that he paints in, he uses this phosphorescent, luminescent paint that actually glows. And we use dark light, black light I should say, to showcase the different coloring, the luminescence in the paintings themselves. And this cosmic work is a presentation of that works really well because of the way it's presented for the universe and other elements. It has a very colorful nature about it.
When I first got interested in cosmology, I'd heard of Einstein before, and I knew of, several other people, Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking and other people like that. And I decided, like in my engineering job, I had to have absolute reality and truth of what this is and what they want to do with it and understand that. I wanted to do the same thing with cosmology, so I only studied from people who were Nobel laureates or running a physics institution at some place in the world. It kind of came down to Einstein, Hawking, Roger Penrose, and then a lady that's one of the best cosmologists in the world, Katie Fries. And she's actually now helping me, she's given me some information, briefings that she's done or something, because she knows I'm interested and I want to do it right. I want to do it the accurate way. So I got some of those, able to attend a 4-day Zoom activity. So I got to listen to them set up this new institution, the theoretical astrophysics department, and she's running that. So I've got what I think is, I don't have to worry about the information I'm getting, is it not at least professional and focused on getting the truth. What's reality look like? As you know, as physicists learn new things, like the Hubble telescope was one thing, now the James Webb Space Telescope is another, and it changed everything because they can see deeper back, they can see more. They know what other parts of the universe look like, or that is just so exciting to know that this is that. These people want to be honest and get the truth, but they also realize that when they get new information, they have to reassess what is truth. And that's very cool. I like that.
I think I connect with this particular body of work. It's his latest body of work. It's a cosmic series. He's had some other series that he's worked on, but this one, because of the unique nature of the work, you don't see this kind of work in the art world per se. There is a truth to what he presents in essence, and he explores how to convey universal qualities of our cosmic life, so to speak, in a very visual way, and tries to explain it visually with the different series that he has. Some of it is a bit more abstract with these pieces here, but in essence, there is a truth to the way it's presented. And when he comes to the shows and talks about the work, everybody's quite fascinated to listen and learn about the universe and the way he presents his work.
My benchmark painting for this last year, and it's called The Unobservable Dark Universe. It has objects and events that occurred in our universe that currently the James Webb Space Telescope can pull most of that information down, put it through physicists, and then I can use that as composition for a painting like this. The painting, as far as time goes, this is a point right here where space and time started for this universe, and this includes called the Big Bang, and it's got the yellow background because it's super hot. This material right here that's just coming out into the new universe is over 1 million degrees centigrade, and as the universe expands, that's what shows this opening up, is the expansion. The yellow turns into an orange, which is much cooler because the universe is expanded and cooled all of the photons down enough that they could start to generate matter like protons and neutrons that are the nucleus of atoms. This is 10 to the minus 32 seconds. Here is like 1 second. Here's 380,000 years out of the 13.8 billion that there are. After this, it starts after the hydrogen atom is created. The photons can be absorbed by an electron to make light and to release light. The universe lit up. That's at the point the universe had light. These are the atoms that build clouds of dust and gas, and these are stars that are built from that. Also, the dark matter are these objects in dark. They are the ones that are making everything grow faster and stronger by providing heat and growing real large, called dark stars, and galaxies that are elliptical and spiral, and are generating black holes that go into galaxies. This is a elliptic galaxy at an elliptical shape. It has basically yellow and red type of stars in it, and this is a spiral galaxy that has a lot more blue stars. They're hotter, bigger, different kind of galaxy. Those start to generate because of the help from the dark matter. They start proto-stars, big stars, that become the actual stars that are, there's 4 types of blue stars, yellow, a red, and a brown. Before that, this area right in here is what I call the birth canal for galaxies. This is what has to happen to generate galaxies. This one turns into a neutron star, a black hole. This one collapses from a blue star directly to a black hole. And this one is a supernova. It could be 20 to 100 times the mass of the sun. Each one of these is a galaxy. A galaxy has 200 to 300 billion stars. They are protected by this dark matter that protects them and feeds them as they continue down through these filaments into what's called the cosmic web. And so this thing is pumping galaxies and galaxy clusters into this cosmic web. This is not the only one in the universe. There's thousands, millions of them. So this is what's creating the universe. This painting was painted to show that all of this stuff is being protected and fed to grow into galaxy clusters and these kind of cosmic webs that continue to grow like a wheel. They're growing out through the filaments and the spokes in the wheel, and the voids in the middle are getting larger as well. So the universe is expanding.
Most people are actually quite surprised that this is actually a reality, and in such a way where he tries to distill visually how the universe works. And they actually learn a lot from the way he conveys his work to them. I mean, there'll be times where people will come here and literally stay with him for almost an hour as he explains each piece in his own way.
Another theory that I painted up here, it's called eternal cyclic universe, because this universe turns into that one and that one and that one and that one over time. And that would be over 5 trillion years roughly. What you see in here, this shape in here is called a brain. It's a membrane that's more like a two-dimensional surface, that all of the electromagnetic strong force and weak forces are in here. This is Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose. That's their theory. And that's I only paint things that come from Nobel laureate kind of guys. They may be wrong, they may be right, but this is the theory that they're following right now and trying to get evidence to prove it. These other paintings are small subsets of these. This particular painting is a galaxy. It's called a starburst galaxy. This was in our universe. They have photos of it from about 800 million years after the Big Bang. And this is way more mature than it should be at that point in time. That's because a lot of this dark matter was feeding and protecting what was growing inside of the birth canal, and creates galaxies that mature faster. This is sort of the Big Bang feeding this. There's all kinds of information in here, but this, once again, like it was out there, this yellow is super hot. Some of this in the chance of 1 million degrees. In the orangish, it's in the tens of 100,000 degrees. The theory is here that this one didn't survive because it didn't have a strong black hole at the center. It had these 3 objects competing for the mastery of this, the quasar. This is later in time. In this painting, that right there is a galactic supercluster. That one is this one in this painting. This is called Laniakea. This one's called Perseus. These both are galactic superclusters. Each one of them has 100,000 galaxies. Every galaxy has 200 to 300 billion stars. So they're big objects, but they're still small in comparison to the cosmic web and this. These two are being attracted by gravity, and they will at some point converge and turn into one of the big black holes that ends up evaporating.
I like his paintings. I love his paintings. I just wish that, more people would be able to understand, what it is that they're looking at, because it's hard to look at the work that he does and to understand how much he puts into it, the time that he puts into it. But you can't understand a lot just by looking at it if you're just a layperson. You just have to, once you start understanding the story, it just becomes really special, what he's doing and what he's trying to communicate, to the world. just about cosmology and the universe and, truth and, that kind of thing.
I use acrylic mediums of different kinds. I get the raw material, and sometimes I manipulate that, use the acrylic medium as the way of putting it down on canvas. But I get really excited about getting new effects by, one thing I did kind of by accident. I took some fluorescent paint and I just poured it out on a sheet and different colors and let it not over each other, separate, and let it dry. And then I peeled it off the next day, and I was trying to figure out how to cut it in little bitty pieces. And that's tough. I used a knife, scissors, I used a coffee grinder, and found out that getting the engineer piece of me, how do I make this stuff more fragile so, when I try to cut it, it splinters into little pieces. That's what I want. I don't want all this stuff wrapped around the coffee grinder blade. This thing came to me, I don't know if it was that night I woke up or something, but I just realized I can put it in the freezer and then put it in the coffee grinder. And yeah, it really knocks it down. And then some of this you've seen on the paintings is a result of that sort of a surprise. Something was created by accident in a way. But that's kind of what Einstein did, was he thought about something, pondered on things, and then he would have some kind of an insight that made his gifts to the world, or some of the best, of the humanity's created.
I think he's found his thing. I mean, every artist is seeking to be unique, to be themselves, to be different. And that is the essence of a really good artist. And it takes time to develop that. You're trying to create something that's going to differentiate yourself from others.
With regard to the finding a way of fragmenting the fluorescent paint and getting it in small little particles was something that I really enjoyed, because it gave me options about what does a painting look like in daylight, in black light, and in no light. And how do I use that knowledge then to do more than just a painting of the Big Bang and all the way to the cosmic website. It gave me a way of demonstrating, for example, with those little fragments in color, I could put in little yellow chips of yellow in part of the background where I was going to paint something, and then let that gradually, and I'd put then the orange in and let that change to a different color, and then from the orange to a red, and then from the red to a purple, and the purple to a blue, and all of those represented in that painting, which you could only see with a really strong black light, showed what the thermal environment was from just microseconds after the Big Bang to 380,000 years later, when stars started, hydrogen molecules formed and we could start to generate stars. So I got this way of telling stories about not just electromagnetic, colors and light, but looking deeper into what's dark matter, where is it, and how do you represent it when you do a painting? How can you include it in there and do it? And you can use a powerful flashlight to say, okay, now we're like the James Webb Space Telescope. We're looking out using techniques that can help us see or understand where dark matter is and all that. And so that got me really interested in really focusing in on Katie Fries's work with, black holes, dark matter, dark stars, and all that, which are just cutting edge, astrophysics right now. And felt like I was, playing in a world where they might be interested in seeing that. And that's where I think I got some of the help from, and having the right information to start with.
I think what Rod he's found his uniqueness, in a sense. And when you explore his work and you look at his work, it's very different from everything else that you see in the art world. And I think that's what I like about it, is because it takes many, many years for an artist to find themselves, in a way, to find their uniqueness. And I think Rod has finally found something that he could call his, and nobody else does what he does.
The initial Big Bang was pure energy. This is the beginning of 13.8 billion year story. And so right about here, this is where all of the subatomic particles are hot, and quark and gluon plasma. This is about 1 second after the Big Bang, right up here. That's when neutrons and protons started to be created, and other particles there that are created. But the real hero of the story here is down here. This would be at 380,000 years after the Big Bang. Hydrogen atoms exist not only with a nucleus, but with electrons bound to them, plus charge. Electrons are negative charge, they're connected together. And then the photons that come into the electron in the atom cause a lot of new energy to go in. And this is looking at it from a quantum perspective. The electron is not rotating around it somewhere, but it's statistically somewhere in that object. When the photon comes into it, it adds another level of energy and it changes the shape of the basic object. This is the 380,000 years out of 14 billion, is that hydrogen atoms exist and they start to cluster together into nebulae that gravity pushes together, and they start to create stars. These are protostars, basically 7 different types of them here. Right here, there are 4 kinds of blue stars from prototypes, and these are the actual stars that are created. Let's start down at the bottom. Like the brown dwarf doesn't do much and goes on for, trillion years. A red dwarf is created and it does the same kind of thing, but there is a way for it to actually turn into a white dwarf, which is a very important particle or a star in the future. This is the yellow star. It's like our sun, and it goes along for about 9+ billion years before it runs out of hydrogen and helium, and that causes it convert into a red giant that is unstable, and after some of the occurrence, the energy is used here, it dissipates, and what's created is a supernova, the result of a white dwarf at the end. The first blue star, this is probably about 4 to 8 times the mass of our sun. All the blue stars are rock stars. They live hard and die young. The first one in the 4 to 8 times the mass of our sun has also a red giant effect, and it has a supernova, and what comes out of that is a neutron star, which the star is basically made up of neutrons. The next blue star up, this is the one where the star never turns into a red giant. It basically gets to a point where there's another supernova, and what remains there is a small black hole that is one of the gravity engines of the largest type. Third blue star is so dense, it's probably in the 20 times the mass at least of the sun, and it at some point from the blue star compressing down, it turns into a black hole. And this is a fairly sizable, very sizable actually, black hole that can connect with these other black holes and neutron stars and white dwarfs to start to create what's called a quasar, which is in almost all galaxies, it's called the active galactic nucleus. It becomes the nucleus of galaxies. Finally, the biggest blue star, when it detonates, it's a supernova, and what that does is it scatters all kinds of materials in the elements table that are much heavier and much more varied than hydrogen and helium. And that also creates something that helps it get into a black hole that becomes a quasar to produce a accretion disk. The white dwarfs, the neutron stars, the black holes, and the remnants of a supernova of a huge star are what help create a galaxy with an active galactic nucleus. Now, in the meantime, As protostars, there are also protogalaxies. Protogalaxies of elliptical galaxies, protogalaxies of spiral galaxies, and as they mature, these start to form in galactic. They have a different kind. They have more yellow and more red stars and a lot more chaos. The spiral galaxies, however, are the ones that have most of the blue stars. They're much hotter and live and die earlier, and are responsible for creating a lot more stars than ellipticals. The bottom line is all of these stars start to form galaxies that are mature and have an active galactic nucleus, and then those galaxies start to cluster together in galactic clusters, and they are pulled into by dark matter through filaments and dark matter into what's called a cosmic web here in this case, and that's just an abundance of very large, compact, and galaxies continue to grow, and the dark matter supports them. They protect them. They have hydrogen, dust, and things in there that can feed them, and they get bigger and bigger and grow. And that's kind of the 13.8 billion story for this kind of a theory. I used it then to go down and study more for all of these and how dark matter affected it. Does dark energy affect it? So this was my storyboard. I studied this. This is about 2 or 3 years. I studied particle physics, quantum mechanics, astrophysics, and some cosmology to put this all together and into a story. That's how I operate. I have a very storyboard used to paint objects and events that occur with those objects, and then use it to tell a story to people who might be interested in this that are my followers.
Their otherworldly storytelling stems from a background in aerospace engineering and a love of innovation and expression. Rod Cusic, please accept your Top Sistis Masters Award.
With my background in science, technology, engineering, and math, I like to tell stories that help people who don't understand the challenge we're facing to understand it and to help. And I'm so grateful to be a member of this group. Thank you.
I like the work because I'm also somewhat interested, in this too. Just the stars, the universe, the galaxies. Where did we come from? From the very beginning, where are we headed? And I just like that story, like from the beginning to what is the end for us, and is there an end for us? I like his creativity and the uniqueness that he brings to art, with the different types of paints that he uses and the photoluminescence and phosphorescent paints that he uses. So it's like the paintings are not just what you see, but they're different depending on the lighting situation. And so, I don't know, I just think that it took him a long time to get that, to work with the paints and try and make them work the way he wanted to make them work. That took a long time. But, he just had that, determination just to do it and figure it out. And, that's what I like about him. He's just like, he just kind of sticks with things, until he gets it.
I think, if anything, if people can take a look at his work and find what they see in it, I think that they will find some surprising elements that they haven't seen before. And that is what I hope for people to get out of this and convey.
I remember when I was a kid, not a little baby, but getting up into how boys are boys. My brother and I were told by our parents that we were young guys, we can go and do what we want to do and play what we want to play, but the only thing we can't do, the only way that we might get punished, was to lie about something. And so I had that, truth thing drilled in, and that's what cosmology does. All those scientists that are working that, there are hundreds of thousands of them around the world that are doing things that are either science, technology, engineering, or mathematics about the universe. And they're all trying to get to the truth. They compete with each other and all that, which is healthy. But when they come down and some experiment happens that proves something beyond a reasonable doubt, they either are happy about it, clap, proud of them, or they don't stop, but they go back and reassess their thought process and try to get back into the mode of what reality is. And with cosmology, I'll tell you, something that I've noticed is you have a beautiful Hubble telescope for years and years is doing all this amazing work. And then the James Webb Space Telescope comes in, and they're using the infrared rather than the other frequency. They can see through things that Hubble couldn't see through. They can see, Hubble was looking at it, thought the universe was probably about 14 billion years old. And then the James Webb Space Telescope, they're looking out to 45 or more, and then trying to figure out, is that part of our universe that we're seeing that's bigger, or is it part of another universe? And so all that gets exciting again. There's these things they got to figure out. They got to go do experiments and mathematics and figure out, okay, reality is changing a little bit. What is it right now? Knowing that in a few years it'll change again, but always looking for the truth. And that's admirable. That's noble.
Rod is a very unique being. He has the authentic and giving sensibility, and he's always a gentleman. And so I really love that about him. I think finding people like Rod to connect with and to collaborate with in a creative way is what inspires me. It's not easy to find people that you feel that you A, like, and B, that you can collaborate with, and there's a shared interest there in developing something that's unique in its own right.
I think I'm going to continue to stay in the cosmology mode. And what I want to do is, there's so many experiments and theories that that are there, that I just want to continue that, because that's changing so quickly now. It's exciting that I did the painting last year. Okay, it's not completely what reality is right now. I want to go do another one that's a little closer, and just do that, because I'm happy with that. I love doing it, and it's exciting, and it's really. Somebody asked me, who are your influencers? And I basically told them, with respect to cosmology, well, it's Einstein and the general theory of relativity in particular. And then I said, there was a song in the 70s that was about people who, for feeding their mind. Well, they were talking about, some funny mushrooms. But I said I'd like to feed my mind with things like Einstein's special theory of relativity, or in general relativity, or some of Stephen Hawking's, about how black holes at some point in time evaporate. And, those things, they're more they're a real vein than they used to be. And I like staying current with that, feeling like I'm not the star of that the scientists are, but I'm a fan of them. So, and I want to be able to help other people understand it, because it is exciting. And maybe more people will get into truth is important, and learning to do science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for their own pleasure.
He's a very kind of sensitive person, and can get emotional. He's very driven. He is a very honest person, always searching for the truth. And he has absolutely wonderful work ethic. I mean, he's just, always hardworking and driven and dedicated. And he will keep at something until it's the way he wants it, until it's right. Very loving, good family man, great with his kids, just kind of wants the best for everybody.
I think I was selfish in a way because I liked doing art and I liked doing science after I found out what it was about and I was able to do it. I had the education to do it. Because doing that made me happy, and especially when I could combine the two, that was beyond repair. And so find what you love to do, get good at it, make sure that you like it. Don't go deep down into something if you don't like it, if you can help it. Some people just can't help it, they maybe didn't get the benefit of having education or some other thing, some other reason, but my parents were not rich. They just always promoted get education. They had a high school education and that was it. They wanted us to have more, my brother and I, and so they promoted that. And we'll undoubtedly do that. I did that with my daughters and with the grandson, because I want everybody to be happy and respect each other and have fun, enjoy life. It doesn't make you an evil person then, you enjoy it and you respect other people. What could be better than that? If you want to enjoy life, do something that you really love, and because you're better at it, you'll probably get rewarded for it more, whether it's, accomplishments or financial. Do what you love and get good at it.
Today, I have the honor to present the award to some of the artists who are present. I'm going to call Mr. Rod Cusic.